On today's show, DeAndre Hunter has elevated both the ceiling and the floor for the Cavs in his short time on the roster. I'll tell you why. Plus, we will talk about how this week could serve as a little bit of a playoff preview for the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll do all that and so much more on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like 92.3 The Fan, my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you're also signed up for the Locked On Cavs daily newsletter because it is your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That is LockedOnDaily.com. The Cleveland Cavaliers have not lost a game since they traded for DeAndre Hunter. Of course, that winning streak does predate Hunter joining the team. He was still in Atlanta when this 10-game winning streak started, but they've won all 8 games that he has played in. And I think that what we learned this past weekend, and there's a lot of things that we learned about this team this weekend, I think both in the come-from-behind win against Boston in Boston on Friday night, which I think is the most important win the Cavs will have all regular season. And I think that we learned a few different things too on Sunday in a come-from-behind win against the Portland Trailblazers that I think was a really gritty effort for them to find a way to get a win in that one. But what we have learned, I think, in these 2 games, I think really speak to the importance of DeAndre Hunter really on opposite ends of the spectrum. So let's talk about that game against Boston first, because that is the bigger game. That is the more important game. And that is the game where DeAndre Hunter was brought in for not that moment per se, but for that type of performance in that type of win in that specific building against that specific team in late May. Like, that is why DeAndre Hunter was brought in. But what he was able to do in that game, I think, is elevate the ceiling for the Cavs. Would the Cavs have been incapable of beating the Boston Celtics in the postseason without trading for DeAndre Hunter? No, I think that there was still a chance they could have done that. But what this trade did was, I think it increased the likelihood that they beat Boston in the conference finals. And at this point, I don't know if they will or won't. I think that it will be that matchup. I'd be very surprised if those 2 teams are not squaring off in the conference finals. And I kind of look at it as a coin flip, maybe like 55-45 Cavs, I lean, but I think it's a really close series between 2 of the 3 best teams in basketball. And I think that it really could go either way. And I probably would have felt like it was 55-45 Boston before the DeAndre Hunter trade and before seeing DeAndre Hunter on the floor against the Celtics. But what I do think we saw in that game is exactly how he raises the ceiling for the Cavs, because he brings a different element, I think, on both ends of the floor than what the Cavs had prior to that trade. We can see him defend Jayson Tatum. We can see him defend Jaylen Brown. We can see him used in a lot of different ways defensively, specifically in that matchup against Boston. And then against the Celtics, really most of the stuff he's tasked with offensively, because that type of game is there's going to be a bigger lift, right, for Donovan Mitchell. He has to carry a heavier load. And we talked about that going into that, how he has been saving himself a little bit this year so that, one, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland can take the necessary steps forward that they needed to take for the Cavs to be a championship team, but 2, so that when he is called upon to do more, it's easier for him to reach that level, because there's probably a little bit more left in the tank for him at this point in the season than he's used to having. So getting to that level in, late February, and as I imagine in late May, should come a little bit easier. So those games, are the Cavs going to be asking DeAndre Hunter to do a ton offensively? No. His job on offense in those games might be a little bit of self-creation when Donovan and Evan are on the bench, if the rotations in the postseason look the same as they have in the regular season. Like, maybe he does have to be in that lineup with Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen and maybe be the second option there and do a little bit of self-creation. But for the most part, those groups aren't going to be out there as long because starters will be playing heavier minutes. So I think that more of DeAndre Hunter's job is going to be knock down open shots, and the open shots for him are going to be there. And he's done nothing since hit those open shots the entire time that he's been in Cleveland. So I think that right there, because of how he fits in that specific matchup, what he showed on Friday, I think that he raises the ceiling of this team. And it's crazy for me to say that in some senses, because do I think that this team could have won the title this year without making the trade for DeAndre Hunter? I do. I think that they were a team that was good enough to win finals in June, even if they don't make a move, say George Niang and Karis LeVert are still in Cleveland. But I think the likelihood of it has increased. I think that whether or not they win the finals, I think that they are a better team. I think they have become a better team, and I think they can reach heights that they probably couldn't reach before. Now, the heights they could have reached before, I still think we're good enough to win the finals, but I think these heights are higher, which obviously in turn increases the likelihood that they do win the finals. We have no idea if that's going to happen. And then what we learned about him on Sunday in the overtime win against Portland, in a game in which I thought the Cavs really sleptwalked for the first half, maybe first, 30 minutes of that game, because the third quarter they played better offensively, but for the most part, they did not play well enough defensively in that quarter, giving up 35 points. But what we learned from him is, to me, that was the ultimate floor raiser game. Should the Cavs this year beat Portland like 8 out of 10 times? Yeah, they should, because Portland is a good team. They're not a great team. They've been a much better team lately. They were not a good team earlier in the year, but they've become a better team lately. And on a day without Donovan Mitchell playing, in an emotional letdown spot, like that should have been one of the two games that, if you run those teams together 10 games, the Cavs will win 8 or 9 of them, but like that should have been one of the ones that they lose. But he raised the floor for the Cavs. If they don't have DeAndre Hunter, they didn't trade for DeAndre Hunter so that they could beat the Portland Trailblazers at the start of March. Like, that is not what that trade was made for. It was made to beat Boston. It was made to beat New York, Milwaukee, all the teams that the Cavs could potentially see in the postseason. That's what that deal was made for. But they also don't beat Portland without that deal, because yes, Karis LeVert could have gone off for 30 plus points, but I think he's been a little bit more inconsistent. And just what DeAndre Hunter brings in terms of how the offense is different, how there is self-creation, how there is catch and shoot stuff, how it looks, I think, a little bit smoother than what they had before. Like, it just seems to fit in a little bit better, where maybe the offense with Karis LeVert stood out because it didn't necessarily fit what the Cavs were doing. Maybe that was a little bit unique, but Hunter, I think, really plays at the right speed for the Cavs. They don't change much when he's the guy that's going out and getting buckets. And I think that is something that, because you can now call on him, maybe, and we'll see this in Evan Mobley's not going to play tonight against Chicago, so maybe that role for DeAndre Hunter is a little bit amplified. Maybe he is asked to do a little bit more. Maybe he'll start this game against the Bulls at the 4 spot. I don't know. But I do think that in these types of moments, it's easier for the Cavs to just keep rolling without everybody out there. Now, Evan is having a great year. I still think that the biggest loss this team can have on a night-to-night basis is when Donovan doesn't play. Now, knock on wood, he's been very healthy. He'll stay very healthy. Most of the games that he's missed this year have been because of resting purposes. But when that scoring power, when that star power is not out there, I just think watching DeAndre Hunter pick up the slack is something that you look at and say, okay, this team can achieve higher heights, but now their lows, which they still will have lows. I don't expect this team to go unbeaten the rest of the year. They're going to have nights where maybe they don't have it, but on the nights that they don't have it, I think those nights now are probably a little bit better than the nights when they didn't have it before, if that makes sense. Like, their ceiling has been raised, but I think the floor has been raised too. When the Cavs aren't playing their best basketball, I think their not best basketball is better than their not best basketball was prior to this trade. And I hope that makes sense. I think that's the best way that I can explain it. I did mention Evan Mobley not going to play on Tuesday night against Chicago. He's out with a rest designation. There's nothing to worry about injury-wise. Like, it is funny too, because so often teams want to avoid the whole designating someone missing time with rest, like it can kind of draw a side eye, right? Like you hear the debates, oh, these guys are not playing, they don't want to play, which like is totally a ridiculous thing. So I do think that historically, when teams want to sit a guy down for resting purposes, if there is a minor nagging injury or something of that like that is affecting that player, even if it's not nearly a bad enough thing to keep said player out of a game, that player will get marked with that, right? Like you'll see someone pop, oh, sore right ankle or whatever, and it's more so a rest game. And I do think it's a good sign when on Sunday we saw Donovan Mitchell not play, rest. Like, could they have tagged him with a minor injury? Sure. But there's no need to because there's not much going on there. Like, no one in the NBA is 100% healthy, don't get me wrong. But I do think that the Cavs are doing really well in the health department. Like, could Evan Mobley be tagged with a minor injury on the injury report? Sure. But the fact that he is healthy enough that there's not even one to kind of lean back on and say, he needs to give his ankle or foot or hand or whatever a night off. The fact that he's healthy enough to where it's just like, no, this is rest. Like there's nothing to talk about with it. I think that's a really, really good sign. So he won't play against Chicago. We'll be interested to see who, if anybody, sits. Maybe Darius Garland sits against Miami, even though that'd be funny because he did not play the last time the Cavs played in Miami. So maybe they get rest for all three of these guys. And part of the thing that Kenny mentioned on Sunday about rest with Donovan Mitchell is this month has 16 games in a 29-day span. And that is a tough month. A lot of this month is away from home because the MAC tournament is at Rocket Arena. The NCAA tournament, first and second rounds are at Rocket Arena. So there's a lot of stuff non-Cavs wise that's going on in that building. So with that, the Cavs, that's why every season you see the Cavs go out west in March because the MAC tournament is always there. So it's the perfect time for them to go away for a week so that that building can be taken up by something else. You know, you think back to last year, they went on a road trip near the end of the season that maybe you would prefer they don't go on, but the NCAA Women's Final Four was at Rocket Arena, and that means the Cavs can't be in town. So I do think that is something it's a good time to get a little bit of rest. And the fact that the Cavs have built such a big lead over the Boston Celtics for the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, that matters too. One other news note item to get to before I move on to talking about the playoff preview stuff, but Ty Jerome was fined by the NBA $25,000 on Monday afternoon. As I mentioned in yesterday's show, I don't think that this was some unexpected fine. He was extremely critical after the game about the officiating against Portland. I don't think anything he said was incorrect, but when you say what he said, especially when you address an official by name the way that he did, there's always going to be a fine that comes with it. Not surprised in the least bit. I don't think that anyone should be surprised by that, but that will now the book is closing. The last 2-minute report did come out from that game. There were 2 missed calls. Both missed calls went against the Cavs. One was an out-of-bounds call, which I think the Cavs would have challenged had they had a challenge left, but they already used 2 challenges, so they couldn't. And then the other one was the blocking foul on Max Strus at the end of regulation. That should have been a no call. I think everybody, except for the officials that was watching that in real time, probably would have guessed that. But alas, that's not how it went. So the game went to overtime. The Cavs found a way to get a win, but they are back in action tonight, taking on the Chicago Bulls. They've got the Miami Heat tomorrow. They've got the Milwaukee Bucks on Sunday. What do all those teams have in common? The Cavs could play them in the first round of the postseason. So we're going to talk about that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass. Every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. It's simple. When a player scores 50 or more in a game during the 2024-2025 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon until midnight. Maybe you wanted to stay up late. Maybe somebody went for 50. I don't know. I'm recording this before all the games on Monday night are finished. So maybe somebody did go for 50. We'll see. If they did, you probably stayed up late watching it, and you probably didn't get your lunch ready for work the next day. Well, you would be in luck because all you have to do is use the code NBA50 and you can get half off, up to $10 off your order the next day. Just have it delivered right to work. You don't have to worry about getting lunch together from noon to midnight. You're covered. You're good. Or maybe you want to see if someone followed up the next night, so you're going to get dinner delivered. I think that's a great option too. So what you need to do is sign up for Dash Pass. Be ready to save with it. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use promo code NBA50, that is NBA50, from noon until midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcast. Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. And the Cavs are taking on the Chicago Bulls on Tuesday night. And believe it or not, despite the fact that the Chicago Bulls are 24-37, despite the fact that they are 26 and a half games behind the Cleveland Cavaliers in the standings, they are a team that the Cavs could see in the first round of the playoffs. It sounds ridiculous. It is ridiculous, but that is what the play-in tournament has given us. Had the play-in tournament not exist, the Chicago Bulls would be out of sight, out of mind. I wouldn't be talking about this right now, but it does, and there's a chance they end up as the number 8 seed. So the way the play-in tournament works, if you're new here, and the Cavs are going to be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, that has been decided. They have a 7.5 game lead over the Boston Celtics. Boston is not making that up. So the way that it will work is the 1 and 2 seeds, they will have their first round opponent decided by the play-in tournament. So right now, the Miami Heat are 7th, the Orlando Magic are 8th, the Atlanta Hawks are 9th, and the Chicago Bulls are 10th. The 7th and 8th place team, they play a game. The winner gets the 7 seed. So right now, Miami and Orlando would play. Whoever wins that game would face Boston in the first round. The 9 and 10 seeds play. The winner moves on. The loser goes home. So the loser of the 7-8 game plays the winner of the 9-10 game. That means the Cavs are going to see in the first round one of Orlando, Miami, Atlanta, and Chicago. And I don't believe that there is really a world in which any of these series should be competitive in the first round. I understand that there are probably some people out there that are scared of Miami because what the Heat have done in the first round as a very low seed. Like they were a team that went to the finals as an 8 seed that had to get through the play-in tournament and made the finals. That Miami Heat team is not this Miami Heat team. I promise you. I swear to you. This team, there is nothing for the Cavs to worry about. The fact that the Chicago Bulls, who could conceivably, and this is something I spent time on Monday thinking about, it is not out of the realm of possibility that the number 10 seed in the Eastern Conference, which is going to be Chicago, Philly, or Brooklyn, ridiculous for all of them, but it is possible that whoever finishes 10th has 50 losses, which means the Cavs could be facing a team with 50 losses in the first round of the playoffs. That's a wild thing to say out loud, but it's the truth. Now, should anything about any of these teams scare you? No, they shouldn't. Like the Cavs have been such an elite team that I don't think that you have to lose sleep over Miami, Chicago, Orlando, despite what the postseason looked like last year. And Jaylen Suggs might not play again this year. He's out indefinitely after having a knee procedure done. Atlanta, if you want to be worried because the Hawks beat the Cavs twice, go for it. If you want to be worried because of a George Niang or Karis LeVert revenge series, go for it. That Hawks team is not very good, though, especially since they lost Jalen Johnson. Like that Atlanta team would get swept by the Cavs. I think all of these teams should get swept by the Cavaliers in a first-round playoff series. And then we get to Sunday. And Sunday is the game that interests me this week. And there was not a whip-around episode yesterday of Locked On Cavs. I have been a little bit swamped this weekend with a few things. However, I did on Monday sit down with old friend Tony Cartagena, who used to cover the Cavs, now hosts a podcast that covers the Milwaukee Bucks with Thanasis Antetokounmpo. Probably going to release that episode later this week, maybe even Saturday or Sunday. I'm not sure yet, but we're going to talk about that game specifically because I do think if there is one team other than the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference that maybe scare you a little bit, it's the Milwaukee Bucks, because the only thing that the Bucks have that maybe no other team in the East has, Boston probably has it, but the Bucks would have the best player in that series in Giannis. Like if you're drafting players for a series between Milwaukee and Cleveland, Giannis is the first pick in that draft. Now, I think that Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Darius Garland would be the next 3 picks before you get to Damian Lillard in Milwaukee. And then after that, I think there's another gap before you're picking another Bucks player, like you're picking DeAndre Hunter and Jarrett Allen before you're picking Brook Lopez or Kyle Kuzma. Like I do think that it is still heavily in the Cavs' favor, but anytime that you see a team in the postseason that has the best player on the floor, which Giannis still is, that is the one thing that is interesting. Now, Sunday, Milwaukee is on the second night of a back-to-back. They play Orlando on Saturday at home, and maybe Giannis, who has been dealing with a calf injury, has been on a minutes restriction. Maybe he doesn't play. I don't know. But that would be the game this week that I've got my eyes on real close. Well, I mean, I have my eyes on all of them real close, but if I were more of a casual, if you will, that would be the game for me to watch this week because, yeah, tonight could be a playoff preview. Wednesday could be a playoff preview, but Sunday could be a playoff preview too. And Sunday is the one that would happen in the second round in a series that probably has some real stakes for both sides, right? Like, could this be the last run for Milwaukee if they don't get out of the second round again? Maybe. Could be. Could the Cavs end the Bucks as we know it? Could be, but there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And I just think that that's the game. That is the game to watch this week. That is the game that could be a playoff preview. And I will dive much more extensively into that matchup a little bit later on this week with Tony Cartagena. So make sure you're subscribed everywhere you get Locked on Cavs because you don't want to miss that episode. Now, as I do most Tuesdays or early in the week, kind of differs between Monday and Tuesday depending on the Cavs schedule. Probably going to be Tuesday the rest of the way because the Cavs play every single Sunday for the rest of the season. But we're going to talk about the trends. Which direction are the Cavs going in? Well, hint, it's been pretty good. We'll do that next right here on Locked on Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by OpenPhone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. And as your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal phone number. That's where OpenPhone comes in. It is the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. So for just $15 a month, it's the cost of, a few coffees. I get coffees like $6 every day. You get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. Plus, if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. And right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That is OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for 20% off your first 6 months. Again, openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. Thank you again for making Locked on Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked on Cavs content. Let's talk about the trends because the Cavs are the best offense, not in the NBA. Well, yes, in the NBA, but of all time. This is the best offense that the NBA has ever seen statistically. So for the season, because we always start with the full season numbers here first. For the season, the Cavs have an offensive rating heading into Tuesday night of 122.3. That is first in the NBA. That is first all time. Last year, the Boston Celtics set the record, and we have seen this record set a few times in recent memory. And at some point, this offensive bubble is going to burst. I don't know when it is, but at some point we're going to see these numbers start to go down. Like they're going to start getting closer to the league leader is going to be at, 118, which is still really, really good, but it's going to come down at some point. But the Cavs, as of right now, are 122.3 points per 100 possessions. that has never been done before in NBA history. They are historically elite on that end of the floor. And I don't think that there's a better way to put just how good they are than watch the second half against Portland. And Portland's been a really good defensive team lately. The Cavs were stuck in mud in the first half. They were playing terrible basketball. They sleptwalked through it. In the second half and overtime, they scored 91 points. Scored 91 points in 29 minutes. Like, that is ridiculous. That's how good this offense is. And it didn't feel like they were playing above their heads. It didn't even necessarily feel like they got hot. Like, they just played normally. That's how good they are on that end of the floor. Defensively, Cavs defensive rating is 111.1. That is the 7th best defense in the NBA. So it has been, for a good chunk of the season, a little bit worse than where it is. Like, the Cavs defense over the last month and a half or so really has improved. And I think that is important to talk about. And their net rating, of course, is offensive rating minus defensive rating is 11.2, second in the NBA, only behind Oklahoma City, and one of the top 10 net ratings of all time. This team is not just great, they are historically great. Now, they have to go prove it in the postseason, but this is a historically great regular season team. There's no debating that. There's no question about that. That is who they are. Now, for the last 15 games, if you didn't think the Cavs offense could get better, well, my friend, you're wrong. Last 15 games, the Cavs are scoring 125.2 points per 100 possession. Like, just listen to me say that. 125.2 points per 100 possession. As you would imagine, that's first in the NBA. They are just absolutely crushing teams offensively. Since they've added DeAndre Hunter, they've even been better than that. So their last 8 games, which, you know, I'm going back to February 10th when DeAndre Hunter made his team debut against the Minnesota Timberwolves. In their last 8 games, the Cavs have an offensive rating of 125.8. So more than a half point better than what it's been the last 15 games. As you would imagine, first in the NBA. Defensively, last 15 games, 108.2. So it is nearly 3 points per 100 possessions better than the full season mark over the last 15 games. They are the second best defense in the NBA for the last 15 games. Considering that is the All-Star break mixed in there, this basically takes us back to mid to late January. I think this is probably right after the Houston game that they lost at home, maybe a couple of games after that. But the Cavs have been the second best defense in basketball for a little bit more than a month at this point. And of course, that makes sense because they've not lost a game in an actual month. The last game they lost was against Boston on February 2nd. They haven't lost a road game since January 24th. So yeah, these numbers check out. And then since DeAndre Hunter's debut, the Cavs have the 3rd best defense in the NBA. Their defensive rating is 107.4. So he has had a big impact there. Now, his personal on-court defensive rating is 107.5. Like, it's just right in line with who the Cavs have been as a team. The fact that that is better than what they've been all season, pointing in the right direction. I said after they made the trade, it's not that I don't care about what happened defensively earlier in the season, but I think it's fair to put more weight into what is happening defensively after they acquire Hunter. And these numbers say that they are going in the right direction and everything's going to be really good. And the fact that they have been able to, the fact that they haven't slipped at all. And I do want to say something about this. And by the way, their net rating since acquiring DeAndre Hunter, 18.4, best mark in the NBA by a wide margin. I think it's by like 5 points. I believe the Detroit Pistons, who've been playing great basketball against, and congratulations, JB Bickerstaff, coach of the month for February, well-deserved. The Pistons haven't played great teams, but regardless. So the fact that the Cavs have not slipped at all is something that has surprised me. And if you listen to this show, you know, a lot of what I talked about was, you know, teams that win the championship very rarely make a big in-season trade, right? It's not something that happens often. 2 of the last 10 champions have traded for a starter during the season they won the title. Now, if you want to maybe push this forward a year, a lot of teams make a big trade the year before they win the title. Like the Cavs did that. They traded for J.R. Smith and Timofey Mozgov and Iman Shumpert the year before they won the title in 2016 in season. So that is one thing to think about. But so often that happens because it's really hard to integrate somebody during the season. On offense, picking up maybe a new system. On defense, learning new personnel, learning new teammates, learning a new city. Those are really difficult things to do. So I didn't think it was fair to expect DeAndre Hunter to be able to do that. I didn't think it was fair to expect the Cavs to be able to sustain the level of play they were at, and they haven't done that. They have increased where they're at. They have become better in every facet of basketball since acquiring DeAndre Hunter. And to me, that is one of the most impressive parts about all of this, because it's not that I didn't think DeAndre Hunter would make them better. It's that it would kind of maybe be taking one step backwards to take two steps forward. And instead, the Cavs have taken 3 steps. It's just all 3 of those steps have gone forward. And I didn't think that would be something that would happen. Does this mean they're going to win the title? No. Can they win the title? Absolutely. Do I think that they should be the favorites? Maybe. But the fact that they've done this, it has proven me wrong, not because I didn't think DeAndre Hunter was a good player, not because I didn't think it was a good move, but I didn't think it would click this quickly. And that, to me, has probably been the most impressive part. I talk about all these trends and how the Cavs are moving in the right direction. The most impressive part is they didn't just keep going with what they were doing. They added somebody on the fly and they got significantly better, and they were already playing at a historically great clip. And that is wildly impressive. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow talking about the game against the Chicago Bulls.